All right, K-Dog, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I think you had a couple topic ideas.
No, I'm going down Crazy Boulevard. So that comes after legitimate stuff. So we got to have the smart people talk in the beginning and then the crazy town stuff at the end.
Okay. I don't know how smart this is. It's just something I happened to notice today. Do you remember the band Crash Test Dummies?
Yeah.
So I had only ever heard their song that once there was a girl who... Yeah, and I think that's what they're known by. On the way here, I was listening to my 90s channel, and it was a Crash Test Dummies song, and it was called... Oh my God, I kept repeating it so I wouldn't forget it.
That's a long title.
Sacred Alphabet or something?
Okay.
Sacred Alphabet. Have you heard that?
No.
It was so weird. Are they all weird? Do you know much about this band?
I don't.
I only know their one hit song, and I think now I know why they may be a one hit wonder if they are, because that was a weird song. And I don't know if I'm just behind the times and everyone's like, yeah, that's what they do. Or if this is just a song they said, hey, let's play some weird stuff. I bet nobody knows Crash Test Dummies have weird songs. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, expectations on a group like that. I mean, it's almost like what did the Fox say? That song?
Yeah.
Like when that comes out, you're like, oh, that was a really good song. And then you get disappointed when their follow-up music wasn't masterpieces, right? They weren't. They didn't become popular because of a highbrow, listenership. Mm-hmm. They're the Crash Test Dummies, and they sang a song called right?
Yeah.
Okay, so lower the bar a little bit.
Yeah. How about Lonely Island? Do you have you know who Lonely Island is?
No.
I bet you do, and you just don't know that's what they're called. It's that is it Andy Samberg, the guys from SNL, and they do parodies, but they're actually kind of catchy. Like they did I Just Had Sex, I think, with Akon, or they did a Michael Bolton song. You don't know what I'm talking about?
Not at all.
Oh my God.
Listen, SNL left me, and all of the personalities went so stupid and unfunny that I swore them off.
This was a while ago. Yeah. Like they started a while ago.
Them off.
One of my favorite videos of all time on the internet, not the favorite, but one of them, is the Captain Jack Sparrow by Lonely Island and Michael Bolton. You've not seen that music video. All right. Homework assignment for tonight. Lonely Island, Captain Jack Sparrow with Michael Bolton.
Listen, I asked you to watch a movie 6 months ago and you haven't watched it.
I know.
You think that I'm going to take some crappy song that's some parody and invest the time into it when you wouldn't give me that same...
What if tonight I go home and I watch, what is it, Idiocracy?
Yeah.
If you do it? If you watch that music video...
Yeah, in 6 months.
And you tell me that it's not the best.
You watch Idiocracy, and then the stopwatch starts on when I'm going to listen to this dumb song.
It's such a good song, and it's such a dumb video.
Good according to who?
Everyone. Seriously, it's so good. I feel like you probably have heard it, where they do all the movie parodies with Michael Bolton.
Probably haven't, no.
Oh my God, it's so good.
No, there's a point where I checked out of that kind of stuff, and you play my playlist, and it's one segment of time for all time, right? Except for every once in a while, I'll get one of my my son when he was young. We'd play some music to either get him to sleep or whatever, soothing music. So like I'll go from break stuff, right? To Rage Against the Machine and to Lullaby Magic, right?
I was gonna say that's a
So it really, when I'm at the red light and I'm jamming like and I go do do do.
Well,
it happens all the time.
There's a lullaby CD you can buy. It's like classic rock songs as lullabies. I'll buy it. Yeah, it's so good. Like there's Sweet Child of Mine and all kinds of different songs, but it's set as a lullaby and it's so good. Do you base your day, or do you use music to sort of sway your mood or motivation?
No, it has such a profound effect. I use it in small doses because it does stuff to me, and I want to make sure that it doesn't interrupt anything that I've got going on, because it will interrupt.
Like it'll emotionally charge you.
Yeah, and I don't want that sometimes.
Yeah. See, but sometimes you do need to use that. If you're like, if
tool.
I'm in a bad mood, let me listen to this,
Proper tool.
a good mood, let's do this.
Yeah.
You don't have anything that you will like actively be like, all right.
In the background? Yes. Yeah. Like when I need it, I pull it off the shelf. It's almost like, sometimes cocaine's going to be your best friend. And then other times you don't want cocaine to mess with your day. That's sort of like it is with music.
Yeah. Like some days I'm like, all right, some mornings are K-Love and some mornings are DMX. It's what do you need to be that day?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now we got the smart people talk out of the way. Let's get into Crazy Town.
Crazy Town. Isn't that a band? Pretty sure Crazy Town is
no, it's not.
Don't they do that song
No,
Butterfly by Crazy Town?
Nope.
I'm pretty sure it is. We'll look it up.
All right. Let's go Crazy Town. The real Crazy Town. I like living here. I love living in Crazy Town because it does two things. You pushing on the status quo is one of my favorite things, and that's why music has a chance to like push on, my higher intellect, my better senses, my good judgment, and it pushes me to think into areas that I don't, logically come to on a normal, day to day. And same thing with conspiracy theories. I love them because they piss people off, right? Because everything that we do is dogmatic. Like your beliefs are unchallengeable, and when someone comes up to you and challenges one of your beliefs, they're either solid beliefs where you just have a conversation about how you think you're right and you're open to being better informed, or I'm going to slay your soul if you dare say that the oceans aren't rising and the temperature is not going up, right?
Yeah.
And it's a religion of sorts. And the reason I like it is because the people get pissed off at me when we talk about Crazy Town stuff. They need to be infuriated. That is a catalyst. And even if they don't end up with, thinking new things and being open to new things, I think that's it is probably one of the best blessings about being a human being. You have these two sides of you. You have the side that doesn't want to be embarrassed to be felt stupid or being wrong about something. And then you have the ego side that is going to push up against being wrong, even if it means lying to yourself about that you were, you had some incorrect stuff. And I get to engage both of those people. So the open mind, especially people in science, scientists and people who are part of the science religion, right? They want method unchallengeable. And everything about science to me, it means that if Bob Smith wants to go down the rabbit hole on YouTube and look into something and gather their details, right, they can come to the same conclusion that some of the early scientists use with less information. They opened their mind and expanded and came to some conclusions. Now, both of the sides, we'll use flat Earth, for instance, because I watched a debate on flat Earth. And I love that debate for a lot of different reasons. Now, first, are you pro spherical Earth or pro flat Earth?
I mean, I guess I've got to be based off of what I guess think I know or what I've been presented. I would have to be pro spherical Earth. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're not going to look to prove either one because there is no proof. The way that I set up and frame the argument, nobody knows, right? And here's the fabric of belief on the nobody knows deal. And I've had this debate so many times. This is one of my favorite things. All right. So first off, do you believe things you see? Yes or no?
Do I believe things I see?
Yes. So visual information and evidence is the most meaningful thing to you.
Typically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Optical illusions, do you think that they...
That's why I say typically and not always.
Right.
Because
the
there
optical
are...
illusions means that what you see really isn't there. The blue dress, the white dress, what is the... Your brain is perceiving things. Like that is its job, is to make perceptions.
Yeah.
Einstein, who on every wall that I work, there's a picture of Einstein. And there is one message that comes from Einstein that has, since the time I was 16 years old, kept my brain in check, right? And he used to have this example that if you were on a train traveling the speed of light, the judgment and how you are relating what you are versus what something else is. So are you the standard and you going the speed of light on a train and then perceiving what everything looks like, behaves, acts like, and whatever? Or is it the thing over there that's the standard and you traveling at the speed of light is the thing that's moving? So which one's moving is really what it comes down to, right? And so you're sitting in the parking lot and you're in a car that's not moving, and the car next to you moves, and it feels like you're moving.
You hit the brake.
You hit the brake.
Yeah.
So perception-wise, your brain just told you that you were moving because you basically collected the data that was around you, and you came to a good sense judgment. So you had a disease, right? And the disease was in your bile or your blood or whatever. And so you're like, oh, you've got this disease in your blood. I'm going to put a leech on you that pulls and draws the blood out, right? And so we're going to purify you. We're going to get the bad blood out, and we're going to give you new blood. So for the perception, for how we were judging things at the time, that was a logical, good idea. Are you following me so far on all of this?
Yes.
Okay. So his relativity and how you compare multiple things is everything to the flat earth debate. I'm invoking Einstein. I don't know if he'd be happy or sad with me. So, so if you are sitting here right now, are you moving?
At this very moment.
Are you moving?
Am I? See, now I don't know how to answer that, because am I trying to move? No. But am I moving because the earth is moving? Yes.
Okay, so the Earth is spinning at 1,400 miles an hour, and we're rotating around the sun that is 100,000 miles an hour. I'm making all these numbers up, but you get the gist of it. And then our solar system is whipping around the Milky Way galaxy at a certain miles per hour, and our galaxy is in an entire universe. It's probably whipping around. So which one, if you're going to pick the comparison, right? You're going to compare the thing that's not moving in a world where everything is moving. What do you pick? And if your planet is spinning in the same direction as the solar system, you're probably moving twice as fast. And if your planet is moving against the spinning of the solar system, you're half as fast. And so you're not always staying the same. Sometimes you're going faster, sometimes you're going slower. So that's the whole premise of being able to take perceptions and make them meaningful in your best light. So I will agree with you that the Earth is a visual sphere. I'm not going to say it is a sphere because it would need to be compared to something, and I'm not willing to say that it is a thing. It is visually, measurably a sphere based on visual input. So I'm going to take you and I'm going to plop out both of your eyes, right? You have no visuals whatsoever.
Yikes.
Now, without any kind of visual things, I want you to contemplate sphere. What is a sphere on something you can hold in your hand? Sphere as in a planet. What do you have to compare? Like, teach a dog to see red when they don't have any clue what red is. What's a sphere from a non-visual environment?
Gosh, yeah, it would be.
Remember, we're talking perception, so you'd have to experience something that is a sphere. So you can't say something like, well, if you're blind and you walk around the globe, right, you end up at the same spot. In a non-visual world, the same spot doesn't exist. That's me telling you that you're in the same spot. You can't experience the same spot based on that. So in a non-visual world, there's no such thing as a sphere. Right? You follow me on that?
Yeah. My brain is like, can you use your sense of touch? What a sphere feels like in certain instances, but
small
not.
scales. If you took a baseball and you could say this, you wouldn't say a sphere. It's something that I can wrap my hand around. And if I can't duplicate it with something else that also you can wrap your hand around, then that to you is what a sphere represents, right? But when we're talking about things that are bigger than a baseball, you're not going to wrap your hand around it. So you can't experience a sphere. It is just a place that's, way bigger than you could experience, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So good so far.
Yeah.
So Einstein, and I think I'm getting this right, Einstein did an experiment during either a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, I can't remember, where they went to different places and were chasing down an eclipse and measuring light as it moves around an eclipse, right? They wanted to measure what light does when it hits a strong gravitational field. What do you think light does when it hits a strong gravitational field?
Does it get absorbed?
No.
Does it bounce?
Nope.
I don't know what
it bends, right?
Oh,
so
okay,
light
yeah.
will bend
Yeah,
around
yeah.
a high dense object, a planet. So when light shoots in a straight distance, that's our standard. And when it hits a gravitation, it bends around something.
Yes.
Right. We are visual creatures that require light, right?
Yes.
To see things. And can light be manipulated?
Yes.
Yes. So what we see, can it be manipulated? If we're looking at bent light, then what it actually is and what we're seeing might be two completely different things, right?
Right.
So if you have a gravity-dense object that bends light around it, did it bend itself around a sphere, or did it create a sphere in observation because of something called gravity?
Yeah.
So far, so good, right?
Uh-huh.
All right, I'm going to pause this part of the explanation and go back to the example where people on both sides of the flat Earth were debating this. And again, the one important point that gets brought up by scientists, and this seems like a kind of a bullshit excuse, but the only way that a civilization advances, if it decides something is true and moves on to the next thing, and it really doesn't have time to go back and reaccount for something in the past, it has to build upon something that's already done. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a curvature experiment. So another experiment was done. I don't even know what century it was in, where two people went to different continents, and they took a pillar and put it in the ground, and they documented the angle of shadow that the pillar presented. And then they compared what my shadow did on America and what your shadow did on Antarctica. They compared the angle of shadow, and they determined that there was a different angle depending on what continent. So there had to have been curvature, right? Mm-hmm. And that's completely replicatable. We'll use replicatable because I like that one better.
Replicatable.
Replicatable.
We make up words. It's all good.
For sure. So that's something you could do today because we have instant communication. I could call you while you're doing it. I can record the angle, and we can find some kind of curvature.
Yeah.
And it's all fine and good. But if light can be bent, and if light is already benting, then you can argue less about the curvature of the Earth and argue more that light was bent because of a high gravitational field, right? Two arguments. Which is right? I mean, both, probably, right?
Okay. You're talking about a gravitational field potentially in just certain spots, or all over that can make it look different?
And that's, you ever see the experiment where they took like a nylon fabric and they suspended it very taut between chairs, and then they take a weight and they put it in the middle, right? You ever see that where
I haven't seen it, but I can picture it.
You can picture it that it brings the nylon down and creates curvature in space.
Yeah.
Right? That dense object is what gravity does to the things that get close to it. So as you get further away from it, the gravitational pull has less effect on things that come near it. So if I took that same thing and spun marbles around it, right, you'd create an orbit around, and that's what gravity, that's a great sort of illustration for what gravity does. It warps space, and it warps time, and obviously it warps light. And so everything around it is manipulated by gravity. Gravity is the central part of this, conversation. Anyway, so the scientists who make these measurements and historically created evidence and facts around it, they're not going to come off of it's not a sphere. No matter what you say, there's not evidence to say that. So let's just take something that is spherical and unwrap it. Right? If I wanted to make the Earth flat, what would I have to do to it? And I talked to a physicist about this one time, and it was a very interesting conversation. So if I take it, okay, so I'm going to give you a globe, those plastic ones that you put in your office, and I'm going to say, make this into something that's flat. All right. Well, what would you do? Would you have to cut into it?
Yeah.
You have to fold it up, and
cut into it, smash it down
on a thing.
Yeah.
Now, in physics, if you do something to the planet, the Earth, you have to do the same something to everything else around it. So you would have to, if you took a flat surface and you unwrapped a three-dimensional surface, the flat surface would have to be the same thing would have to be applied to it, right? So then you three-dimensionalize the space surrounding it as you make the three-dimensional into something that was two-dimensional. It's hard to interpret because our brains don't function that way.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, going back to the original concept is that the Earth, for all of our perceptions and all of our sciences and all of our measurement, is a sphere. But it's different from saying that the Earth is in of itself a sphere. Visual versus what it in reality it is.
So if light changed, if the sun burned out and it was gone and there was nothing lighting up the Earth, it may not look round.
Well, there would be no look. Think of how your world...
Well, I guess I should say it may not be round.
From a visual standpoint, yes. If you can't see it, then it isn't round. Think of how if you're a cartographer in a non-visual world where you can't see anything and you're charged with exploring a map, right? You might walk up to areas until you can't walk up to them, and that would be the boundaries of things that you could feel or sense or in another direction. So your map would be completely different. You would never come up with it's a sphere because you can't experience what a sphere is in a non-visual world.
So do you not feel like somebody, if given the proper tools for the terrain, could actually walk around the Earth, it would not almost be in a sphere or in a circular pattern?
Okay, so in a non-visual world, walk up a hill, what are you experiencing? Pretend you cannot, in a non-visual world, you can't like have memories of what a hill was. I'm saying from a blank slate, you're a new person on this planet, you have no visual references, and eyes closed, walk up a hill, you only can plot and document and measure things that you can feel with your other sentence. So what is a hill from a non-visual?
I don't know.
You could. There's some things that are now beyond what you can measure.
Yeah. Well, depending on the size, I guess. I mean, you walk up a hill so big that the elevation changes drastically and you experience certain things.
What would you be experiencing? Different smells?
Yeah. Different, oh my God, what's the word? When you go to like Denver and you have altitude, the altitude sickness or the changes in being able to breathe.
But you wouldn't make a connection between being up higher. You have no reference for what altitude sickness is. You just feel differently.
You wouldn't know why you were feeling
right. So if you were to plot it, it was like my feelings inside was I felt bad right here. And you'd have to put a right here blot of the I feel bad zone. That's all you would know. Right?
Yeah.
You can hear things and plot what you heard when you were there. You can touch things and see what they felt like when you were there, but you would never arrive at a sphere because now it doesn't enter in your perceptions as a meaningful measure of anything. Right? So let's take the other side, the flat earth, right? Let's kind of go on the other side and say a flat earther, there's got to be some utility in saying, why flat Earth? Why did you arrive at flat Earth, and why? Sphere, I understand it, right? Because you get some visuals out of it. But I don't think anybody has ever seen a flat Earth. So my first question, and I've never looked into flat Earth, so I don't know what they believe, so I'm going to make some jumps here. I'm picturing pizza, and on the top part is where you live, and the bottom part of the pizza is just like the mantle. Like it is just part of
just rock.
Nobody lives there. It's whatever. You
magma.
You can't traverse it, right?
Yeah.
You can't go there. It's just the ground that it's sitting on, and it's a flying disc through space. And if you get to too close to the edge, there's a big ice wall that keeps you from falling off of the edge or something like that. Seems pretty fanciful, right?
Yeah.
There would be an ice wall that you could see if you're Amelia Earhart. And
I was going to say, people have traveled the earth and not hit such a wall. Right?
Go back to my earlier point. What do you mean travel the earth?
Haven't people started in one location and ended back up in that location? Right. But you're saying doesn't necessarily mean they went around. They could have just
That's an important point.
It.
So when you're flying, you have a compass, right? And in the compass, you're following a heading. If you had a standard where you were looking at what you did and how you flew, again, perceptions, but what if you went north, but in reality, you did like a figure eight and you ended up back right where you began? Because from your perceptions, you went this way forever.
Yeah.
And now you're right back where you began before, but you don't know where you went. You just followed north. And you're trusting that north stayed the same.
So instead of a sphere that you think you went around, it could be pizza. You started off, hit the edge of the crust, went around the crust, and came back.
Yeah.
You did like a half circle.
You could have, yeah. Figure eight.
And how would you know?
You wouldn't. There's not some... And even if you could, even if you had a satellite that was going to track you the entire time, what perspective is the satellite using except for the spherical model? What if you put you ever see the when a plane sets up a flight plan between two places and you expect it to do this and it does like this?
Yeah.
You ever see those things?
I think so.
Because it's basically adhering to a spherical model. It makes no sense. It was the shortest distance, but when you draw it on a map, it was like this big arc that happened.
Yeah.
All right. So that would be a perception thing. When I explain it to you, you're like, okay, well, you started off and the globe is spinning underneath you, right? And then you're traveling around some kind of sphere. Mathematically, that completely makes sense. Unless you say, I don't believe in the sphere part of it. I don't believe in the time part of it. If you take one element out of there, then the flight plan makes more sense, right? Because it would be flying in a straight line or what. So if I took a balloon or I took a hovercraft, right? And I took a hovercraft off the planet and we know the planet spins. Do I have to fly to New York or can I just hover, let the globe spin and then land again? Because really, if the globe takes 24 hours to spin, there shouldn't be a point on Earth that you can't reach in less than 24 hours because all you'd have to do is pick up, wait for the globe to come back to you, and then land, and you're in the same spot at 24 hours. But in 12 hours, there should be no flight that is more than 12 hours because the globe comes to you.
But that doesn't happen. Otherwise, balloons, things of that nature, unless they're anchored to the ground, but if they're not, so if you take a drone and just keep it in the air,
let the globe spin,
will that drone end up in a different location?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever tried that?
All right, let me put my physics hat on. When you're part of the Earth, you are spinning with the Earth. When you take off, you still have the momentum of the Earth when you were spinning with it. Right? So when you take off, you're still moving with the Earth. Now, if you created propulsion to change your trajectory, then you'd be using the propulsion to go to that place. It's again a different way of looking at the perspective. You're driving in a car and you're in the back seat. And you are traveling. You and a ball you are holding is traveling at 65 miles an hour. And you drop the ball. It doesn't immediately travel the road that's behind you. You're at 65 miles an hour. If you dropped it, you'd think it would slam against the back window because it doesn't immediately start moving slower. It takes friction to slow it down from the speed that it's traveling with you. And it might go like this, right? A little arc down. It loses a little bit of friction when it's dropping, and it ends up 4 feet or 4 inches behind where you dropped it. That would make, make sense.
Uh-huh.
I'm loving that you're contemplating this, because this is what I love about this discussion, is because I'm not saying that the Earth is flat. I'm saying taking conventional wisdom and putting a little damper on it to think through things a little bit. So if all of our perceptions in the world around us are visual, and light can be manipulated, then all of our visual understanding of things can also be manipulated.
Yeah, because I know if you take something outside and you stick it in the air, it will be there in a day, in 2 days. It will still be there. It's not like it's going to just shift to another area.
Because it's traveling with the rotation of the Earth. You're not part of the other movements. You're part of the Earth's movements, just like you're in the car.
And in that example of the pizza analogy, instead of if you think you're going sort of in a circle, but really you're going maybe a half circle around the edge, if light can be bent, because you might say, oh, well, I'll see that I'm going this way. Well, if light can be bent, then maybe you won't. You won't see that you did this.
Yeah, there isn't anything on a plane, right, that isn't already part of the visual understanding and the measuring of the world around you. So if it's being bent and that's your reality, then you're just, you're navigating or circumnavigating a globe in a visual sense. But if you take the visual out of it, it's a different game. So if I flew my plane north and I traveled north, that doesn't prove that you went around the globe. It means that whatever north was, you followed it implicitly. And if there isn't a reference point from outside of the globe, you going north, what if north moved the whole time? What if time moved the whole time? What if space moves the whole time? And because you don't have a reference point that says this is the standard of stationary, then the whole thing is just whipping around, and you can get, our brains are calculating it, something that makes sense to us, but it's not really what's happening in the real world.
So what if it was possible to go up in space?
Yes.
See the Earth. Mm-hmm. Get something to come up into the Earth, something large enough that you could see from space, and say, now move around the Earth and watch this thing. Do you think you would watch it then go around the Earth?
Yeah, it would have all of the visual parameters, right? Uh-huh. It would be close enough to the gravitational pull to be going around a visual sphere. Mm-hmm. If you had something outside of those boundaries to be able to look at something, then you have a better chance at getting a new perspective, right? It might be that if you travel out where the gravitational pull of the Earth doesn't affect light, time, or space, that you can get what really is happening, but it's going to be visuals, so all the light that you see is reacting to the gravitational field, so it's still going to be a sphere no matter how far you go out, if that's how you're measuring it.
So can you take all the ideas then that would be it is possible the Earth is flat and make it, well, it's possible the Earth is diamond. It's possible the Earth is square.
Well, that's why my contention is we don't know what it is, because when we start changing the perspective with light, space, and time, meaning that what's the utility in what it is? How are we going to make use of it? If we said it was a diamond, what does that matter? If a sphere, the only way we need to know is a sphere is getting to different places, and it works out that we follow north and we go north, what does it matter if it's anything else, right? Mm-hmm. There's no utility from a practical use of that knowledge. But if, you can't say that what you know is what it is when light can be manipulated, space can be manipulated, and time can be manipulated.
And should we find it at all odd that all of the planets are spheres? But is everything in space a sphere?
That's a good question. Because if you have the same elements that make it visually a sphere exist everywhere. So everything is going to be a sphere.
Yeah, I mean, the moon, the sun, as far as we know, all of the planets. We know floating rocks are not. Why are they not, but planets are?
Okay,
Why are stars not?
Here's another one. There's one element in the the Milky Way galaxy that doesn't follow the spherical thing. And I've listened to the explanation a million times. So you have Saturn, where you have a planet that's sphere, but you have a ring that's completely flat. What makes the ring completely flat against a spherical thing? In science class, you studied electrons, right? Electrons orbit around. And when you're shown a diagram of an electron, what does it look like? Does it look like rings?
It looks like...
Okay, so it looks like an orbiting, right? An orbiting thing, like a planet and a moon.
Around a nucleus.
And when you talk to a quantum physicist, they would say when you measure an electron, it forms a cloud around where it could be in any position at any point, right? Mm-hmm. All around. So it could be in a plane that's at the equator of the nucleus, or it could be any other position around the nucleus.
It can be in any place at any time.
You take a snapshot and it'll tell you where it was. So to represent it to you, I have to put it and depict it in a certain way that you understand that this is orbiting, this is going around, the nucleus of an atom. But it could be in any position around that at any given time. But you wouldn't, if I showed you a cloud of electrons where there was maybe 5 trillion different positions that it could be around the nucleus, and I wanted to put that in an illustration, a visual that you could see, what would that look like? It would basically, there would be a nucleus inside of there, but then there would just be the encasing of a maybe a little bit of a see-through shell to that nucleus, but it would be the electron in every position that was possible around that nucleus, and it would just be another sphere around an additional sphere.
Yeah. My brain's going to all kinds of different things right now.
Share it.
We have debris in space, correct?
Yes.
Anything really that we take up there that's a satellite, a part of a rocket, anything will eventually become just debris in space. Have we ever followed a piece of debris and watched it? Because if something is happening to make things like planets or other items in space look spherical if they are not, could we not then take something that we know is not a sphere, put it in space, and look at it and it would look like a sphere?
It would do what you'd expect it to do. So slingshot, right? Ever watched like some of the early space programs that they use the gravitational field around an object to slingshot them in another direction? So you get towards something that is extremely dense, the gravitational pull pulls you towards it, and you stay just far enough away. Like the International Space Station, how does it stay up there? It reaches a speed that keeps it balanced between the pull of gravity towards the Earth and the push of centrifugal force away from the Earth. And if you meet that center point, you stay in orbit rather than coming down to Earth or flying out into space.
Crazy that we figured that out.
I know. Yeah. I know.
So, we are amazing species.
Yeah. So if you took something, and let's just say you took a satellite or an asteroid and blasted it off in space, it would get close enough to another object where the gravitational field would draw it towards it, and then it would either have enough mass to pull it in towards the place where it would or skip off of it and get propelled in a different direction.
So like millimeter this way you're being pulled, millimeter this way you're being pulled that way or pushed, and you're just hovering.
But mass is an equation as well. If you're heavy enough to be affected, it's going to determine whether or not you get drawn into the gravitational field and become a part of it and crash down into its whatever, or you're going to hit it and skip off of it because the energy and your mass are going to push it in a different direction. Again, very measurable things for the perceivable universe and how we're sort of like having a relationship between what we can see and measure. Like, okay, study an asteroid without a visual environment. explain to someone what an asteroid is. It doesn't freaking matter because light and your perceptions is absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So that's like the eternal optical illusion, is that we are looking at things and calling them true when light...
We don't even know.
We don't know.
For example, I have heard everyone can always see their nose.
Okay.
Do you know you can see your nose right now?
No.
None of us see our nose.
No.
But we actually are seeing our nose.
Yes.
Our brain chooses to ignore it.
Yeah.
But it's still there.
And it's the same reason. There's no utility in seeing your nose. The information that you're gathering from things out on the peripheral and right in front of you, you have been given guidance, brain guidance, in what you should be paying attention to. Mm-hmm. Like, you have peripheral. Like, I saw this thing, and the brain didn't think it was important enough to put in part of our perceptions as a higher priority. Same thing with our nose.
How about those illusions where you look at something in black and white and you look at a plain wall and it's in color?
Yeah.
You didn't look at the color. Your brain made the color.
And that's why I have him on my wall, because you're on a train traveling the speed of light. Put your ego in check to know that everything that you're perceiving is for a utility of survival and thinking you're smart and getting something accomplished. Everything, the what is crowd, right, has no utility except for thinking you're smart above another person.
Yeah.
And it's not that I can say I can prove spherical and I can prove flat Earth. I'm saying don't worry about that, right? Challenge what your brain looks and perceives and measures in what is real. I just told you that I can take the Earth, right, and flatten it. I can take it and cut it and then fold it into a flat surface, as long as the rules say that I unfold everything around it as well. If I apply the same energy to the Earth, I got to apply it to everything that's surrounding the Earth. Brain's not built to handle that kind of contortion.
Yeah. Our brain is not built to handle a lot. I'm seeing more and more.
Yeah.
And I know we always sort of go down this rabbit hole of religion, but I feel like it always ties back to that. For example, I know this is just...
No, go for it.
I go off in a million directions. So until recently, I've never read the Bible. I just haven't. And my pastor recently gave me this read the Bible in a year type devotional thing. And I've started reading it. And I have found myself every so often being like, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. This is such a fairy tale. This is not real. That doesn't happen. Like, people got turned into a pillar of salt. That doesn't happen. That's not a real thing. Aside from the whole possibility of things being lost in translation. That could be a thing. I don't know. It's been translated over however many years. That's not what I'm talking about. But then my brain can't help but say, could things have been perceived differently? Could things have happened differently? We think it's fantasy and magic and unrealistic. But would people back then have seen us talking on a box in our living rooms and not realize that that's not a person in a box?
Let me give an example. So you and your husband, I'm going to put your husband on a rocket ship. And I'm going to put him on there and go at the speed of light, right? He's going to travel for 1 year at the speed of light. Now, if I were to look at you and look at him, you are now 95 years old, and he is 1 year older than when he left, right? Is it magic? Right? So all we had to do was speed something up. Okay? So let me change gears again. So you read in the Bible that someone is 800 years old.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say.
Someone's 800 years.
Why did everyone live for hundreds of years?
Because all that requires is the adjustment of space and time.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me ask you this question. Is the universe, which every science agrees that it is, so you'll be the only one to say no.
Okay.
Is the universe expanding infinitely?
Oh, well, I've heard yes. I don't know, but I've heard that it is.
Into what?
What does that mean? What do you mean expanding?
It's expanding. The Big Bang started with this, and it is expanding outwardly infinitely in every direction.
And and is there, I know this is going to sound like a silly question. Is it fully believed the Big Bang actually happened? Was there a Big Bang?
By whom? By
unarguably. Whom? I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Is that a theory
or is it?
Science needs replication. It needs documentation. It needs photographic evidence. It needs something. Everything else is theory. So today, Big Bang is appreciated by people who study the math on how things happen. And that's the extent of it.
Yeah. But where did the ball of energy that created the bang come from?
So you have big ball of energy that comes from nothing, and you have expansion into infinity of space forever. So if you're saying
forever,
if you're saying magical and incalculable and immeasurable on the theology side, then I'm saying incalculable and immeasurable in fantasy on the scientific side.
Yeah.
Those are opposites, but they're both believable.
Especially if you look at things like magic tricks, magicians, they are doing things that look magical, fantasy, unreal. They are really doing something. Something is actually occurring.
They're playing with your perceptions.
In your perception,
yes.
It looks like something inexplicable happened. So could we not then say, back then, something that sounds magical, fantasy, whatever, was just something inexplicable? I mean, I guess that's an argument for both. But that's
what we started out this conversation with what's moving, right? Mm-hmm. The car's moving or you're moving. And it's about perceptions and that dude on the wall. So let's just say that the universe is not infinitely expanding. It's staying the same. And there wasn't a Big Bang. It was just a measurable amount of mass, and it's not changing.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. That's your standard. That means immovable object. There's your focus, not your focus group, your control group.
Okay.
Now we can start measuring against something that we know is standing still. The problem is that nothing is standing still. Space, time, everything is moving. So our perception of things that are always in motion means that we're going to take a snapshot and we're always going to be wrong. All we're going to be able to do is make up some fanciful reason why everything is expanding into nothing in an infinite pace at light speed. Believe it, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to believe it. It's science.
You don't have to prove it. We just have to prove theories that say probably.
Exactly.
So we went to a planetarium one time, and I don't remember the number or the amount of years, but they said there is a number to our planet. Our planet will burn out in however many years. I can't remember what it said.
It's about 1 billion years, and the sun will expand and envelop the Earth and burn us up, yes.
How do they know that? How do they know it will? That's the thing. I can see if they say there's a theory that this will happen.
So here's what happens in our fusion happens in our sun. Every star that you see is a sun that is using fusion to be able to take elements, condense them down to more dense objects, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And eventually you run out of material, the sun expands, and as it expands, it gets closer to the orbiting bodies, envelops them, and burns them up.
Sounds like movement to me.
It's very much movement.
Not standing still.
It's not standing still. It's not the standard. But again, human perspective is like we have a 30-minute attention span. We're talking about a universe that is billions of years old. And we're trying to use our human brains to figure out the difference. You ever watch those comparisons about like our planet versus the size of our solar system versus the size of our sun? And you just keep going up these scales. And then you look back at the grain of sand that was the Earth and think, wow, we're meaningless. Like we are a pimple on the ass of all of humanity and all of existence.
All of creation.
For sure. And our ego wants to think we're meaningful in some way, but we're one of like 1 billion trillion places that humanity or existence in life can
Hence why it's not so far-fetched to think maybe there's life elsewhere.
Yeah.
Why would we, who are pinhead of the universe, be the only ones?
So a theory of this.
Or if we are, what does that mean?
So let's do two things. Let's do carbon-14 dating, and let's do biblical aging. And when the Bible says in the first couple chapters that somebody lived 800 years, you're like, by today's standards, nobody lives to be 800.
Yeah,
what's this magic?
That's fantasy.
What's the sorcery?
Yeah.
Right? But what if in the age where something was being documented, the universe was smaller because of it hasn't as expanded, which means that it is smaller than it once was, and maybe time lasts more than it did.
A trip around the sun was
5,000.
not a trip around the sun today.
Correct. Right? So 800 years, maybe as if you were to take and translate it down, 800 years equals 100 years. Now we have sort of like, some metrics to be able to translate it down to today's standards. So then you're like, okay, well, 800 years equals 100 years. What about distances of space? If we expanded, then there's more space than there was before. Does that mean distances expanded at the same time that time expanded, which is the same thing that mass expanded or the density or gravity expanded? So all of those translations are constantly changing, but we're comparing, and I'm telling you, in the scheme of things, 5,000 years is absolutely nothing. But all of our sciences were built on 5,000 years of understanding when everything is manipulating, expanding, and changing in that same period of time. So what we know is zero. That's from a mathematical standpoint, it's zero. So then we'll go back to the scientist people. Well, we're not going to be able to innovate if all we do is take the changing amount of time and space and constantly have to change our theories based on the changing elements of everything that's around us, which leaves us at flat earth versus sphere, and we just don't know. If we agreed today, right?
Yeah.
In 2 million years, we're not going to be able to agree in. So it's just a snapshot, and we can have as much agreement as we can measure today, and that's the extent of it. The riding on a train at the speed of light is all that really matters.
When we look at writings in the Bible and we think that's ridiculous, that clearly didn't happen. What if we take today and we fast forward to hundreds of years from now, where science has changed, measurements have changed, the ability to study things has changed, and they look at 2025, will they not think that didn't happen?
They were freaking idiots, and that didn't happen. Much like we would
when
we go back and we look at putting leeches on your veins to draw out the poisonous blood, will be the exact same number of advances that would happen between how we perceive things today and completely logical, completely reasonable, the most sophisticated information for the time, and now, where we know physics, we know quantum physics, we know have a better understanding.
Because I always think gravity existed long before someone wrote about gravity.
Yes.
So before someone ever wrote about gravity and taught about gravity, it was still existing. So would that not have been magic? Would that not have been a crazy concept? So who's to say that other things aren't?
So we take nuclear fusion, where we take atoms and we scrunch them down and create new elements, and we release immense amount of power. We go back 100 years and explain fusion to somebody who is right now working on very primitive sciences. Is that magic? They're looking at fusion like, what are you, a god? But that's, again, we have three elements. And I'll repeat these again for everybody who's arguing with me right now and really pissed off that I think that there is a boundary of ice around a flat Earth, and that when you travel north, you're just doing a figure eight ending up about the...
Do you believe that?
We don't know what anything is.
Know.
We're too stupid. We're too primitive.
We
don't know. You can only say what you do know, which is visually a sphere and no more.
Visually
a sphere.
Sphere, yeah.
No more than that. What was I saying before that?
Oh, God, I don't know. I interrupted you. You look at nowadays where where you were saying that it's a figure 8 and there's this wall of gravity and you're pissing people off.
Right before that.
I thought you were saying...
You said something and I was responding to it. Sorry.
You were saying, well, I'd love to say to the people that are watching this and getting pissed off that I think there's a flat earth and a wall of ice.
I forgot. Damn it.
Ah! Okay, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
If you think about it, just interrupt with it. Okay, so devil's advocate. We're talking to the science-minded people that are like, their religion is cockamamie, and there is no creator, and it's all explicable through science. We are sort of almost, until now, making this argument that maybe religion is onto something. What if they're like, well, you just explained the fact that there were science-based facts happening and we just didn't understand it. So why would we continue to believe in a daddy in the sky, all-powerful creator and all these things that happened when we could just maybe again in another 100 years explain that away to be something else that was perfectly science-based?
The standardization is key there. So, okay, I remember what I was saying.
Okay, go ahead.
You have 3 elements.
Yeah.
And you have to tell me, I'm going to name them, and you tell me if they are the control group, where they stay the same, or if they're malleable and can be manipulated. Time. Is it the standard, or can it be manipulated?
I think it can be manipulated.
Space. Is it standard, or can it be manipulated?
I guess that can be manipulated.
So what was the third? Time, space.
God, we're old.
What are we doing here?
Why do we talk when we drink? Time, space, and matter? Time, space. Everybody watching this right now is yelling
go
at
back.
us.
Go back to. I'll come up with it for a third time.
So basically, I'm talking about the idea of evidence for religion or God.
Well, it's just the pursuit of understanding, and that's the relativity that looking at what is the standard, what is not moving, and look at, okay, so I asked a pastor one time, I said, so you had the accounts for religion through the eyes of people who had a good bead on what was happening, and they started writing the Bible. Is the Bible done? Should there be people right now writing new books of the Bible? Should there be Kelin chapter 3 as account for the Bible? What made the original books the standard, immovable, not to be added to? It's in complete form. Is it done yet?
I feel like the only thing that caused it to be done is pushback. We all started to say, well, now I want to document these experiences I'm having, and someone else is like,
it's done. It's in
you
its
didn't
final
have
form.
Those are scientifically backed. That's not a continuation of the Bible. That's just a science book now. It's just the pushback. If I have what I believe to be is a spiritual or religious experience, and I say, Bible's continuing, I'm documenting this as proof of God. But someone else would be like, that's not proof of God. That was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your brain did this, this, and this. You created that. It's science-backed. It's numbers-backed and math-backed. That's not a continuation. Then it doesn't happen.
But they're equal to me. So if you have a scientific explanation for the Big Bang, it requires a great deal of faith to be able to believe that that's actually what happened, because the scientific method can't prove or disprove anything that you say, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't come from something from nothing without a creator that created something from nothing. So if somebody said, hey, I believe in Big Bang, it is equal to that there's a God that created everything. They're one and the same to me, because both of them are theories. Both of them carry weight. Both of them have acceptance among people. And both of them are like, okay, well, I'll wait to say which is true, right, based on how you can prove it. Mm-hmm. God's going to come up to me and I get to interview him across the way, and he tells me that he created everything, and you're able to replicate the creation of something from nothing. Both of them are fanciful. Both of them will never happen, And both of them has to live in the disbelief and the belief in the back of our brains. 100%. Both are just theories.
So let's look at cavemen.
Yeah.
Do we believe cavemen existed?
Sure.
We have proof. We have skeletal remains that show what man must have looked like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So if somebody says, I believe, maybe not even Adam and Eve, because if I'm correct, and I'm new here, there was Adam and Eve, but then the earth was destroyed, and then it started over, I think. So
I'll go with it.
Let's say Moses. I've just read about Abraham. Let's say those people. Were they cavemen? Did they look like cavemen?
Probably not.
So how do we go from magical people to cavemen that we believe scientifically are based? And
timeline. Again, a manipulated thing where time has changed. The sort of like the process of accelerating or decelerating through time, right? Mm-hmm. Your book begins at 2025 years ago, right? And everything before that. So did everything exist before 1 billion years? Do they owe it to you that if your story began at 2000, that 1 billion wasn't required? Maybe there was 100, 500, 800 million years worth of evolution that led up to the story of book 1 of the Bible that you read. Is it off limits? Can you not have a pre-Genesis 1-1? It's not required. Nobody made you that promise that there's an accounting before of when you paid attention. They pick up at a certain point, and Hollywood would make a prequel, right? There was shit that happened in the beginning, and it was less meaningful than day 1 of Genesis 1.
So, I mean, basically it starts somewhere, and we have the ability to write and communicate. Did the cavemen?
But
did we regress?
The utility of, like, what would it matter if you picked, let's just say you picked 50 million years ago, and fish were becoming fish, and humans were becoming humans, and birds were becoming humans, but there wasn't anything meaningful in the development of the origin, right, to start telling a story yet. They're just very primitive. They're killing each other. They're eating things. They're warring with each other. There's not a story to tell you. There's not sophisticated enough to start talking about chemotherapy. They're on bloodletting. Mm. So maybe the Bible is when humanity started with enough intelligence to say, this is how things should be. It's not really supposed to be an accounting that if you don't know the day before the origin of Genesis, whether or not it's truthful or not.
This might be a silly question, but does the Bible claim to go back farther than cavemen? When did cavemen exist? I don't even know.
Listen, your first day, I'm half day. Like, I'm not even there yet, so I really don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know when cavemen were expected to have existed. I guess I got to Google that and compare it to when all these other people in the Bible existed. Because that was my thinking is, wait a minute, did we have modern day humans? We then resorted or we what's the word I just said? We backtracked to then cavemen and then somehow made our way to modern day humans again. Unless I'm just wrong scientifically as well, which is very possible.
Who told you that the advent of Adam and Eve were the species of everything? What if it was a sort of like a gateway between modern humans and whatever happened before them?
I thought Adam and Eve were first humans on Earth, according to the story.
Could be.
And then
everything before it was non-Adam and Eve, and they became Adam and Eve at that moment. The graduation of everything that evolved up to that point.
So you're saying technically, what if maybe cavemen were before Adam and Eve?
Could be.
But they were humans. And then
who was humans?
Cavemen.
Cavemen weren't humans. If you take an accounting for the Bible that cavemen graduated into the Adam and Eve, which is the beginning and the origin of the species that were above.
We need a timeline.
But time can be obfuscated with everything else we've been talking about. So all that's malleable.
Yeah, because if we are in an era of people documenting things such as the Bible, I don't see cavemen doing that.
No, slugs, birds, every primitive species were not part of the origin selection of human beings.
Would so you they say could then it's possible cavemen were a whole different species than human beings?
For sure. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't.
It's getting deep.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's science say?
About what?
Cavemen.
Becoming human beings?
Yeah.
Theoretical. Good story to tell. Like, did they evolve up into the species of human beings we know today? I don't know. Like nobody does.
If we evolved from apes, ape became what we visualize as sort of cavemen who become more and more of what we are today. And that cuts out the whole biblical explanation of people altogether.
How does it cut it out? Okay, so let's take this. Let's take, you have a whole world of feral, natural cats, right? And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to make cats special. And I'm going to tell the story of cats. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to pull 2 feral cats and I'm going to deem them magical. Those are the beginning of domesticated cats. So you pull 2 by the scruffs of their neck and you're like, these are domesticated cats, right? And you start telling a story about how you get them to eat and you get them to respect your home and they get you to catch mice and you take all of the attributes of a cat and now you've got domesticated cats. But then somebody in the future is like, well, what about the feral cats before? Well, yeah, they were before, but that's before the story you told about taking something. Did anybody promise that there were no cats before you domesticated them? Nobody said that to you. You only started telling the story where you picked them up by the scruff of the neck and you started teaching them things and making them into their final form.
So what about when the Bible says things like, in the beginning? This is how it started.
In the beginning,
how would they know?
In the beginning, I went to the forest and I picked up 2 feral cats and I put them into this garden where I started teaching them things. Go ahead. If you interpreted that as there was nothing before the beginning, right? Then you'd be right. Then there were no feral cats before there. We need
to Google this. We need to Google when did cavemen exist, and then compare that to when does the Bible.
What would that prove? There were things before the beginning and the start of the Bible in Genesis. You interpreted it as now Adam and Eve were made from nothingness. Nothingness can be interpreted as you took a caveman who was eating his own shit and made him into somebody who can fill some kind of purposeful role. What if you're wrong and it wasn't about that? What if it was taking a primitive species and making it into a sophisticated species?
So well, again, that would then go back to assuming cavemen were not humans. They were some other species entirely.
Just another animal that existed here and probably over 1 billion other planets where there are, primitive species of, little single-celled organisms all the way up to birds and lizards and whatever. Probably happening everywhere.
Yeah, I don't.
But when you bought into your own story, when somebody says this is the beginning, that means the beginning means that there was nothing before the beginning. I'm telling you, everything has perspective and can be skewed. It's my beginning. Like if I decided to say, yesterday I was not doing a show and today I'm doing a show, and I said this is the beginning of my show, and you're like, well, you were alive yesterday. But I'm saying, no, this is the show.
Starting
I might have been
now,
but I was alive yesterday. No, you couldn't be alive before the show. And I'm like, no, I was kind of alive, but the purpose would be the show going forward. There was an existence before the show, but this was the beginning of the show. What is the beginning of? Genesis is the beginning of humanity, not of humans.
Humanity.
Humanity.
Not humans.
Purposeful, not eating your own shit human beings.
Interesting.
Perspective. Einstein.
Humanity, not
on
humans.
a train, traveling at the speed of light.
Interesting. And you know what's even more interesting about all this? Back to in the very, very, very beginning of this when we were talking about music. We were talking about using music to evoke emotion, put us in a headspace. You had even said it's so powerful that you have to use it wisely, basically.
For sure.
I heard a pastor one time say, music is meant to be that way because it is anointed.
I believe that. I believe it.
I believe that too. Music is anointed.
Stop listening to Crash Test Dummies, because if you're taking your anointing
we're not counting
from
that.
one-hit wonders, you're fucked big time.
Yeah, maybe not that music. Maybe not them.
All right, K-Dog, what do you want to talk about?